Today is out of Ezra, and it's about trying to think of a proper title. It is, what is your story? What is your story? We start off with Ezra chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia." Now, before we go on, it's like Jeremiah had prophesied. He said after 70 years, there's going to be a restoration. The people are going to return to Israel and to Jerusalem specifically. They're going to rebuild the temple. 70 years later, God speaks to Cyrus. And actually, before this happened, Daniel knows and understands this because he's read it and he's interceding. So the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, "Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth. He hath charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah." He's saying, okay, the temple's going to be rebuilt, just like was prophesied by Jeremiah 70 years before. So this happens over a number of years, but essentially people get together. Cyrus gives them the vessels out of the temple, the gold vessels, the silver vessels, to bring them back. He gives them an allowance to be able to build the temple for timber, for stone, for things that they need to build the temple. So they're busy building the temple. We come down to chapter 4, verse 1. Now, before we go further, why does this matter to us? Well, because we've experienced this. We know God's spoken something into our hearts, or maybe by prophecy over us, and it's like we're waiting for the go-ahead. There's always a lag time between when God speaks it into our heart and before it happens. This goes back to Philippians chapter 2, where it says God works in us to will and to do of his good pleasure. He tells us he wants us to get with the program, and then after he proves that we can't do it, then he does it. And so they're waiting. They wait 70 years, and the word comes, this is okay. And the king's decreed this. So it's like, wow, we've got an open door. We can do this. Chapter 4, verse 1. "Now when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the children of the captivity builded that temple unto the Lord God of Israel, then they came to Zerubbabel and to the chief of the fathers, and said to them, Let us build with you, for we seek your God as you do. And we do sacrifice unto him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Ashur, which brought us up hither. But Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the rest of the chief of the fathers of Israel said unto them, You have nothing to do with us to build an house unto our God. But we ourselves together will build unto the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus the king of Persia hath commanded us. Then the people of the land weakened the hands of the people of Judah and troubled them in building." You see, when God says, okay, this is the program. And that's for all of us, not just back then. When God says, okay, this is the program, and this is the door I'm opening, you have to know that the enemy's going to come after you. He can't touch God, so guess who he's going to come after? He's going to come after you. And that's exactly what happened here. The enemy, working through the locals that were non-Jews, came and said, oh, we want to help you, but it's not real help. They recognized that and said, no, we're going to do it ourselves. They didn't like that, so they're doing everything to inhibit the work of God. It's like, and yes, when God calls you to something, don't be a blabber and go tell everybody what God's telling you to do and what God is going to do, because just as likely as not, the people that are listening to you will probably be jealous and will want to impede you. And how do they impede you? That wasn't God speaking to you. Oh, that definitely wasn't God speaking to you. No, you misunderstood him. No, that's just your pride and your arrogance. No, you just really don't know what you're talking about there. I know what God is speaking to you, and God isn't speaking that to you at all. You'll get all kinds of craziness. Because the enemy wants to stop what God has for you. Can't stop God, so who's going to stop? He's going to try to stop you. That's exactly what's happening here. Now, what happens? They try all kinds of stuff, and then we go down to chapter 4, verse 11. It says, this is a copy of the letter that they, the adversaries, sent unto him, even unto Artaxerxes the king. Thy servants, the men on this side of the river, and at such a time, be it known unto the king that the Jews which came up from thee to us are come unto Jerusalem, building the rebellious and the bad city, which have set up the walls thereof, and joined the foundations. Be it known now unto the king that if this city be builded, and the walls be set up again, then will they not pay toll, tribute, and custom, and so thou shalt endamage the revenue of the kings. Wow. That's a pretty strong letter. It's interesting because they say, well, he's saying here, they've set up the walls and joined the foundations. And then he says, but if it's done, then you won't get any toll, tribute, and custom. Well, it sounds kind of contradictory, isn't it? They didn't really get the story right. But they didn't really have to get it right. Why? Because, you know, the enemy works with lies and deception. He'll tell just enough truth to get you to believe a lie. Now, verse 14 is where it gets interesting. Now, because we have maintenance from the king's palace, and it was not meet for us to see the king's dishonor, therefore we have sent and certified the king that search may be made in the book of the records of thy fathers. So shalt thou find in the book of the records, and know that this city is a rebellious city, and hurtful unto kings and provinces, and that they have moved sedition within the same of old time, for which cause was this city destroyed. We certify the king that if the city be built again, and the walls thereof set up, by this means thou shalt have no portion on this side of the river. Well, what they're telling is a lie, but they say, well, but look at the truth. Look at the truth, the portion of the truth that we believe in. And that's the portion is, look, and this city was a rebellious city, hurtful to kings and provinces, moved with sedition in the time of old. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. In fact, Zedekiah, God had set up Zedekiah and said, you're going to abide by this agreement with the king because you need some discipline. And Zedekiah rebelled. And that's exactly the rebellion he was talking about. So, what is going on here? How can this happen? God said, okay, you're going to be rebuilding the temple. Now what happens right after this is the king says, you're absolutely right, that did happen like that, and you got to stop building the temple. But didn't God call for the temple to be built? Didn't God say, go ahead and build the temple? Didn't he bring them from that foreign nation back into the land and give them provision to build a temple? So how can the work of God be thwarted? How can the hand of God be messed up? You can apply it to your life. So if God has said something and then it doesn't happen, how can that be? Well, there's really good reasons for this. First of all, it looks like they were very busy building, but I don't see a lot of evidence of praying. It says in 1 Corinthians, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, rulers of darkness of the world, spiritual wickedness in high places. You think that it's all over just because God has said so? No, the word will be proven, and it'll be proven in the prayer. I think it was Edison said, success is 90% perspiration and 10% inspiration. Well, the perspiration for Christians is prayer. Okay? And it's like, the work is easy once you've prayed it through. I don't see that there's a lot of prayer going on here. Especially because they were able to send their own version of the truth. That was their story. Well, actually it wasn't the truth at all, it was facts. They sent some facts, and they built a lie on the facts. And this was unopposed by the people of God. I guess they thought, because God said so, we don't have to defend ourselves. Does that sound familiar? It happens to Christians all the time. Well, God said so, I don't have to defend myself. I don't have to. I didn't say anything about defending, I'm saying about praying it through. The enemy is going to attack the work of God in your life. Make sure you understand that. And in the process of doing that, God's done his part, so what does that mean? You have to pray your part through. It's not about work, it's not the amount of work you do, it's not about how hard you work. It's not about how sincere you are about your work. It's about getting into the presence of God